Turn off the camera, my sister Magnolia screamed, lunging toward my phone as the livestream viewer count hit 847 people and climbing. But it was too late. The damage was done. For the past 23 minutes, my family's annual Labor Day barbecue at Willowmere Park had been broadcasting live to my social media followers, and they had just witnessed something that would change everything forever. In the background, my cousin Jasper was frantically shoving items back into what he thought was his gym bag, but which I now realized was actually my designer purse from Meridian Boutique, the expensive black leather Valentino I'd been searching for all week. My aunt Cordelia was attempting to stuff something that looked suspiciously like my grandmother's antique jewelry back into a Tupperware container labeled potato salad ingredients. And my uncle Thorne was having what appeared to be a full panic attack while clutching my laptop, the same MacBook Pro I thought I'd left at my office at Sterling & Associates marketing firm. The comments were pouring in faster than I could read them. "Girl, are they stealing from you? OMG, is that your stuff they're taking? Call the police. This is better than reality TV." Criminals caught in the act, while hundreds of strangers on the internet were putting together what I had somehow missed for years. My own family, the people I trusted most, the people I'd been supporting and helping and loving unconditionally, had been systematically robbing me blind right under my nose. "Cassandra, please," my mother Evangeline pleaded, her face pale as she realized that not only had their theft been exposed, but it had been broadcast live to nearly 1,000 people. "We can explain everything." I looked at her, then at the chaos around me, then at my phone screen where the viewer count had just jumped to 1,203 people, and the comments were now a blur of shock and outrage from complete strangers who had just watched my family get caught red-handed stealing from me during what was supposed to be a wholesome family gathering. That's when I started laughing. Not the kind of laughter that comes from joy or amusement, but the kind that erupts when your entire reality crumbles and rebuilds itself in the span of 23 minutes. The kind of laughter that happens when you realize that every family gathering, every holiday, every celebration for the past 4 years hasn't been about love or togetherness or making memories. It's been about access. Access to my home, my belongings, my trust, and my complete obliviousness to what was happening right in front of me. "You want me to turn off the camera?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the hurricane of emotions swirling inside me. "Why? So you can finish loading up your bags with my stuff without witnesses?" The livestream comments were going absolutely wild now. "She's handling this like a queen. Don't let them gaslight you. Save this video as evidence. Your family is toxic. We're witnessing a crime in real time." What my viewers didn't know, what even I didn't fully understand yet, was that this accidental live stream had just exposed something far bigger than a few stolen items. This wasn't opportunistic theft or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a coordinated, systematic operation that had been going on for years, with multiple family members, with a level of planning and execution that would have impressed professional criminals. And I had been the perfect mark. The successful, generous, trusting cousin who made excellent money as a senior marketing strategist at Sterling & Associates, lived alone in a beautiful townhouse in the prestigious Riverside Commons neighborhood of Belhaven, and had a habit of leaving my doors unlocked for family, because I believed in the fairy tale that family meant safety. My name is Cassandra Blackwell. I'm 34 years old, and until 23 minutes ago, I thought I was living a blessed life surrounded by people who loved me. I had worked my way up to a 6-figure salary at Sterling & Associates, one of the most prestigious marketing firms in Belhaven. I owned a 3-bedroom townhouse with a view of Serenity Bay that I'd saved 5 years to afford. I drove a BMW that I'd paid off early through careful budgeting and long work hours. I had built what I thought was the perfect life, and I was generous enough to share that blessing with the family I adored. What I didn't know was that they had been taking advantage of that generosity in ways I never could have imagined. What I didn't realize was that every family gathering at my house, every holiday celebration, every casual visit, every time I'd left them alone in my space for just a few minutes to grab something from the store or take a phone call, they had been systematically going through my belongings and taking whatever they wanted. Not borrowing, not asking, taking. The live stream had been completely innocent. I'd been documenting our family barbecue because my followers always enjoyed seeing behind-the-scenes content from my life. I ran a lifestyle and career advice social media account called Cassandra Conquers with about 15,000 followers who were interested in work-life balance, professional success tips, and glimpses into how someone builds the life they want. My content was usually polished, inspirational, designed to motivate other young women to pursue their goals. This was supposed to be a feel-good Labor Day post about family traditions and the importance of maintaining connections with the people who matter most. I'd been streaming for about 20 minutes, showing off the beautiful spread of food, introducing my family members, talking about how grateful I was to have such wonderful people in my life. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I had been standing near the picnic tables, describing the homemade dishes everyone had contributed, Aunt Cordelia's famous 7-layer salad, Uncle Thorne's specialty barbecue ribs, Cousin Jasper's artisanal cornbread, when I noticed something strange happening in the background of my phone screen. My family members were moving around with what looked like purpose, but not the kind of purpose you'd expect at a family BBQ. They weren't mingling or eating or playing bings with the kids. They were methodically going through the bags and purses that everyone had piled on a table near the pavilion, and they seemed to be rearranging things. At first, I thought they were just organizing or maybe looking for someone's car keys. But then one of my viewers left a comment that made me take a closer look. Why is that guy going through purses? I turned slightly to get a better view while still talking to the camera about how important family traditions were for maintaining strong relationships. That's when I saw Cousin Jasper, who I'd always thought was a little scattered but basically harmless, carefully removing items from what I now realized was my purse and transferring them to his own bag. But I don't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe he was helping organize things. Maybe there had been some kind of mix-up with the bags. Maybe I was misunderstanding what I was seeing. Then I watched Uncle Thorne, my father's younger brother who I'd always admired for his laid-back, philosophical approach to life, casually pick up what looked suspiciously like my laptop from where I'd set it down near a picnic setup. He glanced around quickly, then slipped it into a canvas tote bag that definitely wasn't his when we'd arrived. The comments on my live stream were starting to pick up on what I was seeing. Is that guy taking your laptop? Girl, watch your stuff. Something weird is happening behind you. That's when I realized that my family wasn't just casually moving things around. They were stealing from me in broad daylight at a family BBQ while I was live streaming to over 800 people. The next few minutes unfolded like a fever dream. I kept talking to the camera, trying to process what I was seeing while maintaining my composure for my audience, but my viewers were more observant than I was, and the comments started pouring in faster and faster. That's your purse he's going through. Why is your aunt taking jewelry? This is not normal behavior. Call them out right now. We're all witnessing theft. I watched in real time as Aunt Cordelia, who had always seemed like the sweetest woman in the world, carefully removing what looked like my grandmother's pearl earrings from a small jewelry case in my purse and slipping them into her own container. The same aunt who had hugged me just an hour earlier and told me how proud she was of the woman I had become. My cousin Jasper was now going systematically through my wallet, and I could see him palming cash and what looked like credit cards. My Uncle Thorne had my laptop fully concealed in his bag and was working on what appeared to be my tablet. But the moment that really broke my brain was when I saw my own sister, Magnolia, the person I trusted more than anyone else in the world, carefully removing the spare key to my townhouse from my keychain and slipping it into her pocket. Not borrowing it, not asking if she could have access to my place, but stealing it like a common criminal, planning a future break-in. That's when I couldn't pretend that this was innocent or explainable. Hey, I called out, my voice cutting through their concentrated theft operation. What are you guys doing over there? The reaction was immediate and telling. All three of them froze like deer in headlights. Not like family members who had been innocently organizing things, but like criminals who had just realized they'd been caught. Jasper dropped something that clattered to the ground. I later realized it was my emergency credit card. Cordelia's face went bright red and started stammering something about just looking for napkins. Thorne tried to casually move his tote bag behind his back, despite the fact that my laptop was clearly visible sticking out of the top. But it was Magnolia's reaction that really shattered my heart. My sister, who I'd supported through her divorce, helped financially when she was between jobs, welcomed into my home countless times, looked me straight in the eye and said, "We weren't doing anything, Cassie. You're being paranoid." Paranoid. Like I was imagining the systematic theft I was literally watching happen. Like the evidence wasn't right there in front of me and 863 live stream viewers who were rapidly screenshotting everything for posterity. That's when I realized this wasn't their first rodeo. The casual way they moved, the practiced efficiency, the immediate gaslighting when caught, this was a well-rehearsed operation. They had been doing this for a long time, and they were good at it. The live stream comments had become a chorus of outrage and support. Don't let them gaslight you. We all saw what they were doing. Screenshot everything. Your sister is lying to your face. This is so messed up. Family or not, theft is theft. I looked at my phone screen, then at my family, then back at my phone screen. Nearly 1,000 strangers on the internet had just witnessed something that I had somehow missed for years. They could see what I had been blind to. My family wasn't just taking advantage of my generosity, they were actively stealing from me, and they were good at it, that I had never noticed.
"Magnolia," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, "can you explain why Jasper has my credit card in his hand?" She glanced over at our cousin, who was still standing there holding my emergency visa like a complete amateur criminal. That's not your card, Cassie. You're confused. It's the blue one with my name on it that I keep in the back of my wallet for emergencies," I said. "The one that's been missing for 3 weeks that I assumed I'd misplaced?" The silence that followed was deafening. Even the viewer comments seemed to pause as everyone waited to see how this was going to unfold. That's when Uncle Thorne made the mistake that turned this from a private family confrontation into a public spectacle that would end up changing everything. Instead of coming clean, instead of apologizing, instead of trying to make things right, he looked directly at my phone camera and said, "Cassandra, you need to turn that thing off right now. This is private family business." The audacity was breathtaking. He was literally holding my stolen laptop, demanding I stop recording the evidence of their theft because it was private family business. The live stream comments exploded. "Private family business? You mean crime? Sir, you're holding stolen goods. The audacity of this man. Don't you dare turn off that camera. We're your witnesses now." And that's when I realized something that would change the trajectory of my entire life. These strangers on the internet, people I'd never met, were showing me more loyalty and support in this moment than my own family had shown me in years. They were telling me not to let myself be gaslight. They were documenting evidence for me. They were validating what I was seeing and experiencing. They were treating the theft of my belongings as the serious violation it was, while my family was trying to manipulate me into pretending it hadn't happened. You know what? I said, looking directly at the camera instead of at my family. "I don't think I will turn it off. I think this has been going on for a lot longer than just today, and I think it's time everyone understood what's really been happening at these family gatherings." That's when Magnolia made her desperate lunge for my phone, Uncle Thorne started his panic attack, Aunt Cordelia began her frantic attempt to put my jewelry back, and Cousin Jasper dropped my purse entirely, spilling the contents across the picnic table for everyone, including my live stream audience, to see. The next few minutes were chaos, my family members scrambling to cover their tracks, arguing among themselves, trying to grab my phone, attempting to justify their actions, and generally behaving like the criminals they had apparently become. And all of it broadcast live to over 1,200 viewers who were recording, screenshotting, and commenting faster than I could follow. But in the middle of all that chaos, I had a moment of perfect clarity. This accidental live stream hadn't just exposed a few stolen items, it had revealed the truth about relationships I'd been treasuring for years. It had shown me that every family gathering, every holiday, every celebration where I'd felt so grateful to have these wonderful people in my life had actually been a carefully orchestrated opportunity for them to rob me. Every time they'd complimented my beautiful home, they'd been cataloging what they wanted to take from it. Every time they'd praised my success, they'd been calculating how to benefit from it. Every time they'd told me they were proud of me, they'd been setting me up to trust them with access to everything I'd worked so hard to build. And the most twisted part of all, they were good at it. If it hadn't been for this accidental live stream, if hundreds of observers hadn't been there to point out what I was missing, I might never have caught them. I might have continued believing that I was blessed with a loving family while they systematically stripped away everything I'd earned. As I stood there watching my family members frantically trying to undo the evidence of their theft while my phone continued broadcasting their panic to an audience that had grown to over 1,500 people, I knew this was just the beginning. Because if they were brazen enough to steal from me during a live stream, if they were organized enough to coordinate their theft, if they were manipulative enough to immediately try to gaslight me when caught, then this operation was far more sophisticated than a few grabbed items at a family barbecue. This was systematic. This was planned. This was a long-term strategy that was working perfectly until 23 minutes ago when technology accidentally shined a light on the truth. And as the comments continued pouring in from strangers who were more outraged by my family's behavior than my family was ashamed of it, I knew that everything I thought I understood about my life, my relationships, and my place in this family was about to change forever. The question wasn't whether they had been stealing from me. The evidence of that was now documented and witnessed by over 1,000 people. The question was how long it had been going on, how much they had taken, and what else I was going to discover once I started looking at my family with the same clear eyes that my live stream audience had been using all along. But that story, the story of how I became the perfect victim, how they became such efficient thieves, and how a simple family barbecue livestream accidentally exposed years of systematic betrayal, that story was going to take much longer to tell. And judging by the comments still pouring in from viewers who were as invested in this revelation as if it were their own family drama, I had an audience of witnesses who were ready to hear every single detail.
Let me tell you about the woman I was before that live stream changed everything, because understanding who I was will help you understand how perfectly I was set up to be the ideal victim for what my family had been doing to me for years. My name is Cassandra Blackwell, and I had built what I thought was the perfect life in Belhaven, a beautiful coastal city about 2 hours north of Seattle. At 34, I was the senior marketing strategist at Sterland & Associates, one of the most prestigious boutique marketing firms in the Pacific Northwest. I specialized in brand development for tech startups, and I was damn good at my job. Good enough that I was pulling in $127,000 a year, plus bonuses that could add another $20,000 to $30,000, depending on how well my clients performed. I lived alone in a 3-bedroom townhouse in Riverside Commons, an upscale development that overlooked Serenity Bay. The place had floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room that gave me a view of the water that never got old. Hardwood floors throughout, a kitchen with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that I'd upgraded myself, and a master suite with a walk-in closet that was bigger than my first apartment. I'd saved for 5 years to afford the down payment, and I'd been paying extra on the mortgage every month because I wanted to own it outright before I turned 40. My BMW X3 was parked in the attached garage, paid off early because I hated the idea of debt hanging over my head. My retirement accounts were healthy. I had 6 months of expenses in my emergency fund, and I was even contributing to a separate vacation fund because I believed in rewarding myself for hard work with experiences that enriched my life. I had worked for every single thing I owned. Every piece of furniture, every appliance, every item of clothing in my walk-in closet had been purchased with money I'd earned through 60-hour work weeks, difficult clients, and the kind of dedication that meant I often ate dinner at my desk and checked emails until midnight. I wasn't handed anything by anyone. I had built my success from the ground up
through pure determination and competence. And I was proud of it, not in an arrogant way, but in the quiet, satisfied way of someone who had set goals and achieved them through her own effort. When I looked around my townhouse or checked my bank balance or got recognition at work for a campaign that exceeded expectations, I felt the deep satisfaction of knowing I had earned every bit of it. But here's the thing about success that no one really prepares you for. It changes how other people see you, especially family. And it definitely changed how my family saw me. I came from very humble beginnings in Millbrook, a small town about an hour inland from Belhaven, where the biggest employer was a paper mill, and most people worked jobs that paid just enough to get by. My parents, Gerald and Evangeline Blackwell, were good people who worked hard but never quite managed to get ahead. Dad worked maintenance at the paper mill for 37 years before his back gave out, and Mom cleaned houses for wealthy families in the nicer part of town. They did their best with what they had, but money was always tight and luxuries were few and far between. I was the first person in my family to go to college. I worked 3 jobs to pay for it: waitressing at Rosie's Diner, cleaning office buildings at night, and doing data entry for a local insurance company on weekends. I lived on ramen noodles and generic cereal, wore clothes from thrift stores, and studied in the library because my apartment was too small and noisy for concentration. But I graduated cum laude with a degree in marketing and communications, and I had job offers before I even walked across that stage. My first job was at a small marketing firm in Belhaven, making $38,000 a year, which felt like winning the lottery after years of scraping by. I lived in a studio apartment that was barely bigger than a closet, drove a used Honda Civic that I'd bought with cash, and still shopped at thrift stores because old habits die hard. But I was building something, creating a foundation for the life I wanted. Within 2 years, I'd been promoted twice and was making $52,000. I moved to a 1-bedroom apartment in a better neighborhood and bought my first new piece of furniture, a sofa that I'd researched for months and saved up to purchase. It was navy blue microfiber from Ashley Furniture, nothing fancy, but it was mine and I'd earned it. The trajectory continued upward from there. Better jobs, higher salaries, nicer apartments, gradually accumulating the markers of success that I dreamed about when I was eating 50-cent packets of ramen for dinner 4 nights a week in college. By the time I was 30, I was making 6 figures and living in a beautiful apartment downtown. By 32, I'd saved enough to buy the townhouse in Riverside Commons. And that's when my family really started to notice. See, when I was struggling through college and working my way up from that first $38,000 job, my family was supportive but not particularly interested in the details of my life. They were proud of me in that general way families are proud when someone does well, but they had their own problems and struggles, and my career progression wasn't really relevant to their daily lives.
But when I bought the townhouse, when I started posting pictures on social media of my beautiful new place with its water view and upgraded appliances, when I mentioned casual things like getting my car detailed or picking up organic groceries from Harvest and Hearth Market, or taking weekend trips to Portland just because I felt like it, that's when the dynamic shifted. Suddenly, my success became very interesting to them, very relevant, very much something they wanted to be part of. The first sign should have been how different family gatherings became once I had space to host them. Before the townhouse, we used to rotate between my parents' small house in Millbrook, my Aunt Cordelia and Uncle Thorne's cramped apartment above their antique shop, and occasionally my sister Magnolia's place when she was married and had more room. The gatherings were simple affairs. Potluck style, everyone brought something, we'd squeeze around whatever table was available, kids would play in the yard or living room, and we'd spend the day catching up and enjoying each other's company. But after I bought the townhouse, suddenly there was this unspoken assumption that I would host everything. Not because anyone asked me if I wanted to, but because my place was so perfect for entertaining and had so much space and such beautiful views that everyone could enjoy. The first time it happened, I was flattered. It was Easter 2021, about 6 months after I'd moved into the townhouse, and my mother called to ask if I might be willing to host our traditional Easter brunch, since my place was so lovely and spacious. Of course, I said immediately.
I was excited to show off my new home, to prove that I could be the kind of person who throws beautiful family gatherings, to demonstrate that my success could benefit everyone I cared about. I went all out. I deep cleaned every room, bought fresh flowers from Petals and Stems Flory for every surface, set up a beautiful brunch buffet on my dining room table with real cloth napkins and my good dishes. I made homemade quiche, fresh fruit salad, artisanal coffee, and even baked hot cross buns from scratch because I'd found a recipe online that looked impressive. The morning of Easter, I spent 3 hours getting everything perfect. I arranged the food beautifully, set up a coffee station with real cream and raw sugar, made sure there were fresh towels in the guest bathroom, and that my house looked like something out of a home and garden magazine. When my family arrived, the reaction was everything I'd hoped for. "Cassie, this is incredible! Your house is like something from a movie. You should be a professional party planner." They took pictures of everything. The food, the table setting, the view from my windows, themselves gathered around my dining room table looking like the perfect happy family. I felt like I'd arrived, like I'd reached some new level of adulthood where I could provide beautiful experiences for the people I loved. Like my success had a purpose beyond just my own comfort and security. What I didn't notice, what I was too busy basking in praise to pay attention to, was how quickly they all settled into guest mode. How naturally they assumed that hosting meant I would handle not just the space and the setup, but all the work. How easily they transitioned from contributors to consumers. In previous family gatherings, everyone had always pitched in. Mom would arrive early to help with food prep. Magnolia would automatically start clearing dishes. Uncle Thorne would take charge of corralling the kids. Aunt Cordelia would stay late to help with cleanup. It was collaborative, communal, shared work that made the celebration feel like a team effort. But in my beautiful townhouse with my perfect setup and my obvious pride in hosting, they seemed to unconsciously shift into a different mode. They complimented everything, enjoyed everything, took pictures of everything, and then sat back and let me handle everything. When it came time to clean up, I found myself alone in the kitchen loading the dishwasher while everyone else gathered in my living room admiring the view and talking about how wonderful the day had been. When I finally joined them an hour later, exhausted but trying to hide it, they were already talking about leaving. "This was perfect, Cassie. You really have a gift for this kind of thing." A gift. Like hosting beautiful gatherings with some kind of natural talent rather than hours of planning, preparation, and work, plus a significant financial investment in food, flowers, and supplies. But I pushed down the tiny flicker of irritation because the day had been beautiful, everyone had clearly enjoyed themselves, and wasn't that what mattered? I was in a position to provide something special for my family, and they were grateful for it. That felt good. That felt purposeful. The problem was that it set a precedent. 6 weeks later, my cousin Jasper's birthday was coming up, and Aunt Cordelia called to ask if I might be willing to host a little celebration for him. "Nothing fancy," she assured me, "just family. But your place is so perfect for gatherings, and Jasper was just saying how much he loved Easter at your house." Of course I said yes. It was family, it was a birthday, and I had the space and resources to make it special. Plus, I'd gotten better at hosting since Easter. I knew what worked and what didn't, and I was confident I could create another memorable celebration. Jasper's birthday party was smaller than Easter, but required just as much work. I bought decorations, planned a menu around his favorite foods, made sure I had his preferred beer stocked, and even ordered a custom cake from Sweet Sensations Bakery. The party was a success. Everyone had a great time, Jasper felt celebrated and loved, and I got to see that look of appreciation and admiration from my family that had become addictive. But again, I found myself doing all the work while everyone else enjoyed the fruits of my labor. This pattern continued through the summer and fall of 2021. Magnolia's birthday in July, hosted at my place. My parents' anniversary in August, celebrated on my deck with its beautiful water view. Labor Day family BBQ held at my townhouse because I had the space and the outdoor setup. Thanksgiving,
moved from its traditional location at my parents' house to my place because my dining room could accommodate everyone so much more comfortably. Each event was lovely. Each celebration was memorable. Each gathering reinforced the narratives that I had become the family's official hostess, the person with the perfect home and the generous spirit and the resources to make every occasion special. And I embraced that role because it felt meaningful. It felt like my success had purpose beyond just my own comfort and security. It felt like I was using my blessings to bless others, which seemed like exactly what success was supposed to be for. What I didn't realize was that I was also training my family to see me in a very specific way. Not as Cassandra, the person with my own needs and limitations and desires for reciprocity, but as Cassandra, the resource, the person who provided beautiful experiences, delicious food, comfortable spaces, and generous hospitality whenever they wanted to celebrate something. I was becoming a service provider rather than a family member. The shift was so gradual, so wrapped up in genuine love and appreciation that I didn't recognize it for what it was. When they complimented my home, I heard affection. When they praised my hosting skills, I heard admiration. When they suggested having the next gathering at my place, I heard recognition of my ability to create something special. What I should have been hearing was the sound of expectations being established, the sound of my role in the family being redefined from participant to provider, the sound of a dynamic being created that would eventually make me completely vulnerable to the kind of systematic exploitation that I wouldn't discover until a live stream accident exposed it years later. But at the time, all I heard was appreciation and love. All I felt was the satisfaction of being able to use my success to bring joy to the people I cared about most. All I understood was that I had something valuable to offer, and my family was grateful for it. I started following lifestyle and entertaining blogs, learning about table settings and menu planning and seasonal decorations. I subscribed to food and wine magazines, researching new recipes and presentation ideas. I developed relationships with local vendors, the florist who could create perfect centerpieces, the bakery that made custom cakes, the specialty grocery store that carried imported ingredients. I was becoming an expert at creating the kind of gatherings that would make my family feel special and celebrated. I was developing skills and knowledge that went well beyond just cooking a meal or cleaning my house. I was learning how to curate experiences, how to make occasions feel magical, how to turn ordinary celebrations into extraordinary memories. And I was doing it all with my own money, my own time, my own energy, and my own genuine desire to make the people I loved feel valued and appreciated. What I didn't understand was that this generosity, this competence, this reliable willingness to provide beautiful experiences was creating a very specific set of expectations. My family was learning that Cassandra was the person who made special things happen. Cassandra was the person who had the resources and the skills and the motivation to turn any occasion into something memorable. Cassandra was the person who could be counted on to provide, to deliver, to exceed expectations every single time. And once that dynamic was established, once they became accustomed to the level of effort and investment I put into every gathering, anything less started to feel like disappointment, rather than appreciation for what was actually a tremendous amount of work and generosity. By the end of 2021, I was hosting every family gathering, every birthday, every holiday, every anniversary, every casual get-together that someone decided the family needed. My calendar was full of family events that I was responsible for planning, funding, and executing, while everyone else just showed up and enjoyed the results of my labor. I was spending thousands of dollars a year on family gatherings, not just on food and drinks, but on decorations, flowers, special serving pieces, upgraded linens, and seasonal items that would make each celebration feel unique and thoughtful. I was investing dozens of hours in planning and preparation for each event, researching ideas, shopping for supplies, cooking and decorating and cleaning.
And I was doing it all gladly because I believed that this was what family meant. This was what success was for. This was how love was expressed and received. What I didn't realize was that I was also creating the perfect conditions for what would eventually become systematic theft. Because when you establish yourself as the family member who always provides, who always has beautiful things, who always opens her home and her resources to everyone, you also establish yourself as someone who can be taken from without consequence. When your family becomes accustomed to benefiting from your generosity, from enjoying the results of your hard work, from being surrounded by your nice things in your beautiful home, it becomes very easy for them to start feeling entitled to those benefits. Very easy for them to start seeing your possessions not as things you've earned, but as resources that should be available to them. Very easy for them to make the mental leap from Cassie is generous with her things to Cassie's things are available for us to use to Cassie has so much stuff she probably won't even notice if some of it goes missing. And when you've trained your family to see you as a provider rather than a person, when you've established a dynamic where they consume and you produce, when you've created a pattern where your role is to give and their role is to receive, it becomes almost inevitable that someone will eventually cross the line from accepting your generosity to taking advantage of your trust. But I didn't understand any of that in 2021. All I understood was that I had found a way to use my success to bring joy to the people I loved most. All I knew was that my family appreciated what I could provide for them, and that felt good and meaningful and worthwhile. I thought I was building stronger family relationships. I thought I was creating beautiful memories that would last for years. I thought I was demonstrating that success was most meaningful when it was shared with the people who mattered most. What I was actually doing was setting myself up to become the perfect victim for a years-long campaign of systematic theft that would be so well executed, so carefully coordinated, and so psychologically manipulative that I wouldn't discover it until strangers on the internet pointed it out to me during an accidental live stream. But that realization was still years away. In 2021, I was just a successful woman who loved her family and wanted to use her blessings to create beautiful experiences for the people she cared about most. I had no idea that I was also creating the perfect conditions for them to rob me blind. Now, let me tell you what I discovered in the days and weeks following that explosive live stream, because what my family got caught doing at that Labor Day barbecue was just the tip of an iceberg that went so deep, I'm still discovering new layers of their betrayal months later. The live stream ended with over 2,400 viewers and hundreds of people demanding I save the video as evidence. My phone was buzzing constantly with notifications, screenshots people had taken, screen recordings they'd made, offers to help, expressions of outrage on my behalf, and even some viewers who said they'd called the police on my behalf because they'd witnessed crimes being committed in real time. But my family, they scattered like roaches when the lights come on. Uncle Thorne literally ran to his car with my laptop still partially sticking out of his bag, claiming he had a medical emergency he needed to attend to. Aunt Cordelia grabbed her purse, which I now realized contained my grandmother's jewelry, and announced she suddenly felt sick and needed to go home immediately. Cousin Jasper dropped my credit card on the ground and mumbled something about remembering an important appointment before practically sprinting to his vehicle. And my sister, Magnolia, the person I trusted most in the world, the person who still had my house key in her pocket, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Cassie, you're being dramatic. You're embarrassing the family by making a scene over nothing." Over nothing. Like systematic theft was nothing. Like years of betrayal was nothing. Like being gaslit in front of over 2,000 witnesses was nothing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the live stream in my mind, seeing things I'd missed in the moment.
The practiced way they'd move through my belongings, the casual coordination between them, the immediate pivot to gaslighting when they got caught. This wasn't opportunistic theft. This was a well-oiled operation that had clearly been running for a long time. So, I did what any rational person would do. I started investigating my own family. The first thing I did was change all my locks. At 6 a.m. the morning after the barbecue, I was at Bellhaven Security Solutions getting new deadbolts installed and my garage door code changed. The locksmith, a kind older man named Frank, asked if I'd had a break-in. Something like that, I told him. Then I called my bank and reported my credit cards as stolen. The representative, Sarah, was incredibly helpful and immediately froze all my accounts while expediting replacement cards. But then she said something that made my blood run cold. Miss Blackwell, I see there have been quite a few small transactions on this account over the past several months, mostly at places like gas stations, grocery stores, restaurants. Nothing large enough to trigger fraud alerts, but the pattern is consistent with someone having access to your card information. Would you like me to pull a detailed report? My heart stopped. Yes, please.
What Sarah sent me 20 minutes later was a 47-page document that detailed every transaction on my credit cards for the past 18 months. And as I scrolled through it, a pattern emerged that was so clear, so systematic, and so violating that I literally had to run to the bathroom to throw up. They hadn't just been stealing from me at family gatherings. They had been using my credit cards regularly for months. Small amounts, just like Sarah had said. $23.67 at Murphy's gas station, $15.43 at Quick Stop Market, $67.22 at Romano's Family Restaurant, $89.15 at Bellhaven Grocery Mart. Dozens and dozens of transactions, always under $100, always at places they frequented, always timed for when they knew I'd be busy at work and unlikely to check my accounts immediately. The most nauseating part was how smart they'd been about it. They knew my spending habits well enough to camouflage their theft among my legitimate purchases. They knew I rarely checked my credit card statements line by line because I trusted my family and had never had reason to be suspicious. They knew I made enough money that these small amounts wouldn't immediately catch my attention. But when I added them up, these small amounts totaled over $3,800 in the past 18 months alone. $3,800 stolen from me by people who were eating at my table, sleeping in my guest rooms, and telling me they loved me while they systematically robbed me blind. I was shaking as I printed out the entire report and started highlighting every transaction I didn't recognize. Page after page after page of theft, camouflaged as normal purchases, spread out over months to avoid detection. But that was just the beginning of what I discovered. Next, I started going through my house, room by room, cataloging what was missing. And once I started looking, really looking, with the suspicious eyes I should have been using all along, I couldn't believe what I found. Or rather, what I couldn't find. My grandmother's pearl necklace that I kept in my jewelry box, gone. I'd assumed I'd misplaced it months ago. My expensive Lancome skincare set that had cost me $280 at Nordstrom, gone. I thought I'd used it up, but I distinctly remembered it being nearly full the last time I'd looked. The vintage Hermes scarf I'd bought myself for my 33rd birthday, gone. I'd been looking for it for weeks. A bottle of expensive perfume, my good kitchen knives, a cashmere throw blanket, several pieces of designer clothing, electronics accessories, even things as mundane as expensive candles and premium skincare products. Item after item after item that I'd assumed I'd misplaced, used up, or somehow lost. But now, armed with the knowledge of what they were capable of, I realized I hadn't lost anything. It had been stolen, systematically and carefully, by people who knew my home well enough to take things I might not immediately notice were missing. The most violating discovery was in my bedroom. I kept a small amount of emergency cash in an envelope in my nightstand drawer, money I'd been saving for a rainy day. When I checked, the envelope was still there, but instead of $800 I'd accumulated over several months, there was only $120. They had been taking my cash, but not all of it, just enough to avoid making the theft obvious, but not enough to avoid taking advantage of me. They'd left me just enough that if I had happened to count it, I might have assumed I'd remembered the amount wrong.
The psychological manipulation was breathtaking. They weren't just stealing from me, they were gaslighting me into questioning my own memory and perception. That's when I decided to check my home security system. I'd installed cameras when I first moved into my townhouse, mostly for package deliveries and general security. They covered my front door, back door, and main living areas. I'd never thought to review the footage because I'd never had reason to be suspicious of the people I trusted with access to my home. What I found when I started reviewing months of footage made me physically ill. There was Magnolia, my sister, letting herself into my house on a Tuesday afternoon while I was at work. She spent 47 minutes going through my belongings, taking multiple items, and even eating food from my refrigerator before leaving like nothing had happened. There was cousin Jasper using his copy of my key, when had I given him a copy, to enter my house on a Saturday morning, spending over an hour methodically going through my closets, my jewelry box, and even my medicine cabinet before leaving with a bag full of my belongings. There was Uncle Thorne, arriving with Aunt Cordelia on a Thursday evening, both of them systematically searching my home office, taking photos of documents, and leaving with electronics and other valuable items. Video after video after video of my family members treating my home like their personal shopping mall, taking whatever they wanted whenever they wanted it, completely confident that I would never suspect them of such systematic violation.
But the worst part wasn't the theft itself. It was watching how comfortable they were doing it, how familiar they were with my home, my routines, my possessions, how they moved through my space like they owned it, taking their time to select what they wanted, sometimes even trying on my clothes or testing my electronics before deciding whether to steal them. They weren't desperate people making poor decisions in moments of weakness. They were calculated criminals running a sophisticated operation, and I was their primary target. As I sat in my living room at 2 a.m., surrounded by printed credit card statements, lists of missing items, and screenshots from security footage, I had to face a truth that was almost too painful to accept. My family had been systematically robbing me for at least 2 years and probably longer. Every family gathering where they'd complimented my beautiful home had been a scouting mission. Every time they'd admired something I owned had been them cataloging future theft opportunities. Every expression of appreciation for my success had been them calculating how to profit from it. The people I loved most, the people I trusted completely, the people I'd been financially and emotionally supporting for years, had been repaying my generosity by stealing from me in the most calculated and manipulative way possible. But I wasn't done investigating, because if they were bold enough to steal from me during a live stream, if they were organized enough to coordinate their theft over months and years, then I needed to understand the full scope of what they'd been doing. The next morning, I called my accountant, Patricia Martinez at Clearwater Financial Services, and asked her to help me do a comprehensive review of my finances. I explained what I discovered and asked her to help me identify any other irregularities. What Patricia found made the credit card fraud look like pocket change. "Cassandra," she said during our meeting 3 days later, "I found several concerning patterns in your financial records. Has anyone in your family had access to your personal information? Social security number, bank account details, anything like that?" My stomach dropped. "What kind of patterns?" "Well, there are several credit inquiries on your report that don't correspond to any accounts you've opened. Someone has been checking your credit regularly, possibly trying to open accounts in your name. There's also been unusual activity on your savings account, small withdrawals that don't match your typical spending patterns." She slid a folder across the desk to me. "I think someone may have gained access to your online banking information." The folder contained printouts showing that over the past year, there have been dozens of small withdrawals from my savings account. Always under $200, always on different days, always transferred to what appeared to be cash withdrawal locations around Bellhaven. Someone had been draining my savings account $50 to $150 at a time. Based on the timing and frequency, this looks like someone who has your login information and is very familiar with your banking habits. They're taking amounts small enough to not trigger alerts, but large enough to add up to significant theft over time. I did the math. In the past 12 months alone,
over $4,200 had been stolen from my savings account. Combined with the credit card fraud, the cash theft, and the value of the physical items that had been stolen from my home, my family had robbed me of over $15,000 in the past year and a half. $15,000? Money I'd worked 60-hour weeks to earn. Money I'd been saving for my future, for emergencies, for the life I was building through my own hard work and discipline. And they'd been stealing it from me while I cooked for them, hosted them, supported them emotionally, and opened my home and my heart to them unconditionally. "Patricia," I said, my voice barely steady, "I want to press charges." That afternoon, I walked into the Belhaven Police Department with 3 boxes of evidence: credit card statements, bank records, security camera footage, lists of stolen items, screenshots from the live stream that over 2,000 people had witnessed. Detective Maria Santos listened to my story with the kind of patient attention that told me she'd seen this before. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair and shook her head. "Miss Blackwell, I have to tell you, family financial abuse cases are some of the most complex we handle. The evidence you've brought me is extremely thorough, and what happened to you during that live stream gives us something we rarely have in these cases: independent witnesses and video documentation of the crime in progress." She picked up one of the folders. "Based on what you've shown me, we're looking at charges of credit card fraud, identity theft, burglary, and conspiracy. The systematic nature of this, the coordination between multiple family members, the length of time it's been going on, this is serious criminal activity." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we investigate. We'll need to interview the family members involved, execute search warrants for their homes to recover your stolen property, and work with the DA's office to determine appropriate charges. I have to warn you, though. Family financial abuse cases are some of the most emotionally difficult we handle. Are you prepared for what this is going to mean for your relationships?" I thought about that question for a long time. Was I prepared to destroy my family relationships over money and possessions?
Then I thought about Magnolia looking me in the eye and calling me paranoid while she had my house key in her pocket. I thought about Uncle Thorne demanding I turn off the live stream while he was holding my stolen laptop. I thought about Aunt Cordelia trying to stuff my grandmother's jewelry back into a container while nearly 1,000 strangers watched her panic. I thought about years of systematic theft, manipulation, and gaslighting. I thought about the violation of being robbed by the people I trusted most. I thought about how they'd turned my love for them into a weapon they used against me. "Detective Santos," I said, "they destroyed the relationships when they decided to steal from me. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen." The arrests happened over the next 2 weeks. Magnolia was arrested at her apartment with several of my belongings still in her possession. Jasper was found with my credit cards and over $300 in cash that he couldn't account for. Uncle Thorne and Aunt Cordelia were arrested together at their antique shop, where a search warrant revealed a storage room full of items stolen from various sources, including dozens of things that belonged to me. The local news picked up the story because of the viral nature of the live stream. "Local woman accidentally exposes family theft ring during social media broadcast" was the headline in the Belhaven Tribune. The story went national when larger outlets realized that the original live stream had been viewed over 100,000 times as people shared and reshared the footage. But the most satisfying moment came 3 weeks after the arrests, when Detective Santos called to give me an update. "Ms. Blackwell, I wanted to let you know that we've recovered most of your stolen property. Your family members have been cooperating with the investigation, and we've been able to track down nearly everything they took from you. But there's something else you should know." "What's that?" "This wasn't just about you. When we searched their homes, we found evidence that they'd been running similar operations against other people, neighbors, friends, other family members. You weren't their only victim. You were just their primary target because you had the most to steal and you trusted them completely." The relief I felt was overwhelming. It wasn't just about money or possessions. It was about validation.
about knowing that what had happened to me was real, was criminal, was something that required consequences. But the most unexpected outcome came from my social media followers. The live stream had been shared so widely that my account grew from 15,000 followers to over 200,000 in just a few weeks. People were drawn to the story, but they stayed for the aftermath. I started posting updates about the legal process, the emotional journey of dealing with family betrayal, and the practical steps I was taking to rebuild trust and security in my life. My content evolved from general lifestyle advice to helping others recognize and deal with financial abuse, manipulation, and toxic family dynamics. The response was incredible. Thousands of people shared their own stories of family financial abuse. People who'd been stolen from by relatives, manipulated by family members, gaslit into questioning their own perceptions of obvious mistreatment. I realized that what had happened to me wasn't unique. It was part of a pattern of family exploitation that happens more often than anyone talks about because people are ashamed to admit that their own family members have betrayed them. 6 months later, I launched a consulting business helping people identify and address financial abuse. I speak at conferences about recognizing manipulation tactics. I work with law enforcement to help them understand the psychological dynamics of family financial crime. My life is completely different now. I still live in my beautiful townhouse, but I live there alone, and I like it that way. I still host gatherings, but now they're for friends I choose. People who contribute to my life rather than just consuming from it. I don't speak to Magnolia, Uncle Thorne, Aunt Cordelia, or Cousin Jasper. They all pleaded guilty to various charges and received sentences ranging from probation to 18 months in county jail. They've attempted to reach out through other family members, claiming they want to make amends, but I'm not interested. Some people think I'm being too harsh. Some people think family should forgive family no matter what. Some people think I should prioritize reconciliation over justice. But here's what I learned from that live stream and everything that followed. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who feel most entitled to take advantage of you. Sometimes the people who praise your success the loudest are the ones who resent it the most. Sometimes the people who tell you that family means everything are the ones who understand family means nothing when there's money to be stolen. The live stream was an accident, but it was the best accident that ever happened to me because it showed me the truth about people I'd been supporting, protecting, and loving for years while they systematically betrayed me in return. And most importantly, it showed me that strangers on the internet, people I'd never met and probably never would meet, were capable of more loyalty, honesty, and support in one live stream than my own family had shown me in years of carefully planned theft.
Sometimes the people who care about you the most are the ones who tell you the truth, even when it's painful to hear. Sometimes the family you choose is more important than the family you're born into. And sometimes a live stream accident can save your life by showing you who people really are when they think nobody's watching. My name is Cassandra Blackwell. I'm 34 years old, and I accidentally exposed my family's theft ring during a BBQ livestream. It was the most devastating and liberating thing that ever happened to me, and I wouldn't change it for anything. 3 weeks after the arrests, Detective Santos called me with an update that would change everything I thought I knew about my family's criminal operation. Miss Blackwell, we've recovered most of your stolen property, but there's something else you need to know. This wasn't just about you. When we searched their homes, we found evidence that they'd been running similar operations against other people, neighbors, friends, other family members. You weren't their only victim, you were just their primary target. The relief was overwhelming. It validated everything. My decision to press charges, my refusal to keep it in the family, my choice to prioritize justice over false peace. They weren't desperate people who'd made poor choices. They were career criminals who'd been systematically exploiting anyone who trusted them. But the most unexpected outcome came from my social media account. The livestream had been shared so widely that my followers grew from 15,000 to over 200,000 in just 3 weeks.
People weren't just drawn to the drama, they stayed for what came after. I started posting updates about the legal process, the emotional journey of dealing with family betrayal, and the practical steps I was taking to rebuild my life. My content evolved from general lifestyle advice to helping others recognize financial abuse, manipulation, and toxic family dynamics. The response was incredible. Thousands of people shared their own stories. Messages flooded in from people who'd been stolen from by relatives, manipulated by family members, gaslit into questioning their own perceptions. Stories of parents draining their children's college funds, siblings stealing inheritance money, spouses secretly accumulating debt in their partner's name. "Your live stream saved me," wrote a woman. "I've been missing money for months and blaming myself for being careless. After seeing your story, I checked my security cameras and caught my brother stealing from me." Another message: "My family always made me feel guilty for having boundaries with money. Watching you stand up for yourself gave me the courage to say no to my manipulative relatives." I realized that what happened to me wasn't unique. Family financial abuse is epidemic, but nobody talks about it because we're conditioned to believe that family loyalty trumps personal protection. We're taught that keeping the peace is more important than keeping our dignity. 6 months later, I launched Blackwell Consulting, specializing in helping people identify and address financial abuse. I speak at conferences about recognizing manipulation tactics. I work with law enforcement to help them understand the psychological dynamics of family financial crime. I've testified before state legislature committees about strengthening laws around elder financial abuse and family exploitation. My social media account now has over 400,000 followers. I've written a book about my experience that became a bestseller. I've appeared on national television shows, been featured in major magazines, and built a business that generates more income than my marketing career ever did. But more importantly, I've helped thousands of people recognize that they deserve relationships built on mutual respect rather than one-sided exploitation. I've shown them that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. My family tried to reconcile. All 4 of them pleaded guilty and received sentences ranging from probation to 18 months in county jail. Through other relatives, they've sent messages claiming they want to make amends, that they're sorry, that family should forgive family. My response has been consistent. I forgive you for my own peace. But forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. Trust, once shattered by systematic betrayal, can't be rebuilt with apologies. Some relationships don't survive the truth about what they really were. I still live in my beautiful townhouse overlooking Serenity Bay, but now I live there by choice rather than convenience. I still host gatherings, but they're for people who contribute to my life rather than consume from it. I've learned the difference between generosity and enablement, between love and exploitation, between family and people who happen to share your DNA. The most profound lesson from that accidental live stream: sometimes strangers care more about your well-being than the people who claim to love you. Sometimes the family you choose matters more than the family you're born into. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing that could ever happen to you. That Labor Day barbecue live stream lasted 23 minutes and changed my entire life. It showed me that I'd been living a lie, surrounded by people who saw me as a resource rather than a person. But it also showed me that truth, even when it's painful, is always better than comfortable delusion.
My name is Cassandra Blackwell. I'm 34 years old, and I accidentally exposed my family's theft ring during a BBQ livestream. It was the most devastating and liberating experience of my life, and I wouldn't change a single second of it. Because that accidental livestream didn't just expose their crimes, it revealed my strength. It didn't just end toxic relationships, it created space for authentic ones. It didn't just cost me a family, it gave me back my life.
Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is having people show you exactly who they are when they think nobody's watching. And sometimes the worst betrayal becomes the greatest gift because it forces you to stop settling for crumbs when you deserve the whole meal. The live stream ended, but my real life finally began.